When I was a young person, I was working in politics in the legislature in Tallahassee and worked for Governor Reubin Askew. And came down to Miami, was minding my own business, practicing law, learning how to be a lawyer, trying to raise a family with my wife, Diana. And my friend Carlos de la Cruz said to me one day, "Would you mind joining me at a meeting?" And I said, "Sure, what's it about?" He said, "It's a group of people that are interested in incorporating Key Biscayne." I said, "Sure." And so the rest was many, many years of my life, my wife's life, dealing with the issue of self-government at the lowest level in Dade County. Now, at the end of this conversation about government, if I'm doing my job, you're going to be wondering whether I'm an optimist or a cynic. And the answer is, I'm not sure. But I'll tell you what I think about, and particularly so in light of what's going on in the world today. I'm reminded of what was said in the Declaration of Independence. And when I started looking at these words, I thought about having a word processor and doing a red line because of things like instituted among men and the fact that the person who wrote these words owned people. But I said, I'm not woke. We will deal with this issue as it was written. And the thought is important. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And then you think, flash forward 77 years, and you had Abraham Lincoln consecrating a battlefield. And it seems to me, what could be more important on a day like today when we're watching the battlefields of a nation trying to grasp freedom and independence and self-reliance for themselves against a brutal dictator. And what Lincoln wrote, "These dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth." And you flash forward 100 years after that, when Martin Luther King stood in front of the Abraham Lincoln Memorial on the Mall, in front of a staggering crowd of people, and said, among so many other things that were important, that when the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. And is it not, to me, it is to me, important that in this day and what we're seeing, that so many people talk about people who died for their country, who served their country, we're now seeing that in real time. And perhaps it will cause us to understand better about how important our country should be to us. So I'm going to take you through a minute of my own life experiences, or my view, and this is my view, of political organizations in this country. We know we have a federal government. We know we have a state government. We know we have a county/regional government, because they're more than just a county government. And in Key Biscayne, we have a town government. And now what we know about those governments, I think, is pretty obvious. The federal government is dominated by interest groups with private agendas, and the influence of the public is infinitesimal. And I'll give you an illustration of that. Ask someone, should billionaires pay taxes? Everybody says, well, sure. Well, should they at least pay taxes at the same level as ordinary people? Sure. Well, why don't they? Well, the answer is because of loopholes. Well, can you do anything about it? No. So we know that's the problem, but we understand that the government of the people has not achieved its goal in our own country because the public's voice is drowned out. Now, the state government, it's, in our state, you can hardly fly to Tallahassee to get back and forth anymore since service is so bad. And it's also driven by interest groups with private agendas. And, I worked there for 5 years. I was chief assistant to the Speaker of the House, so I speak from personal experience. And the public's view is quiet, small, ineffective. And then you get to the county and regional government. And I want to say at the outset, in this county, for the first time in my experience, we have a commissioner who actually is listening to us. And I believe the mayor sincerely is interested in helping our community and other communities in Dade County. But I can't forget the long track record of county government being driven by interest groups and insensitive to the needs of people. I'll be honest with you, I have fought that government since Carlos de la Cruz invited me to that meeting. I've gotten to know the organization pretty well. I understand how it works and doesn't work, and I can tell you it has not worked very well for the people of Dade County for most of my lifetime here. And then you get to the town and municipal government we enjoy on Key Biscayne. Its interest groups have virtually no influence in what that government does, and the people do. Now, that's not all good, because the people don't all agree with each other, and some of them are just darn nasty, and some of them don't take being nasty with very easily. But the reality is, what we see in our community is deep involvement in what's going on at the most important level, because that's the level where you can run for office without spending $1 million, where you can know the people you elect, and where you can express your unhappiness in a way with people who will listen to you. And so what we have here is a system that is fundamentally not doing very well. Now, I have to make reference to the fact that we have a town or village government, but there are many municipal governments that essentially are very, very large. They might as well be urban governments. City of Miami is 500,000 people. The beach is not far behind, as is Hialeah. Those communities have the same problem as the urban government of the county, and very little effective community participation. And of course, I have to make reference to the fact that post-World War II, there was a view by people in academia that we should eliminate municipal governments altogether, that it would be more efficient to have county and municipal governments join together in a single government, and God would smile on us much happier if we did all that, because our services would be great, and we don't need to be bothered by meaningful participation. It's all going to work out. And so what happened is that with the large county and regional governments, what happened is that we lost the participation in that government. Now, I want to also bring something to your attention, which you probably haven't thought about. It's a concept of preemption. Preemption is an issue where you think you have local power, but the federal government comes down and wants to take it away from your state, from your county, and then ultimately from your city. And the state says, that's terrible, federal government. You shouldn't be doing that. That's our job to take things away from county and municipal government. And then the county says to the state, you shouldn't be doing that. It's our job to take the power away from the cities. And so what you have is this notion that you can preempt local decisions by adopting in a larger government something that essentially, once again, empowers people with the greatest amount of resources. So what we're left with is, this is, of course, my opinion, but I'm 100% supportive of it, and it's more than anecdotal. Service of the federal government is poor. I love our country. I love our government. Winston Churchill said it's terrible, but come up with a better idea. No one really has, but it isn't great. It's too big to influence meaningfully. The state governments can be better, but they're not doing that great a job. County regional governments can be better than the state, and I will say I'm reasonably encouraged that in recent days, the most optimistic I've been about county government. But town and municipal governments, I think we've proven, is the best way for public interest to be involved. And so what we see with small local governments is public participation, tailoring government to fill local needs, educating leaders and citizens in how government works, diversity in structure, organization, goals, and the means to achieve them. So people are inventing things in these small local governments. And of course, farm teams for developing leadership for larger governments. I'm very proud after the Key Biscayne experience, we went to Aventura and Pinecrest and Miami Lakes and Doral and Sunny Isles Beach, and I guess is now the Russian version of local government in Dade County. And we went to Isla Morada. And my greatest pride, someone would say, we did this for almost 12 years. My wife and I drove around this community, arguing as the Johnny Appleseed for local government. And the great pride I have is every one of those governments did something equivalent to Village Green. Every one of them set up programs to improve public area maintenance, local recreational programs, and local policing. Every one of them created a sense of community just like we did. And so, as the Johnny Appleseed for local government, I am enormously proud. And someone says, well, why did you do that all those years for free? And the answer is psychic income is in your life far more important than the income that you get that puts in your wallet. The psychic income's to make a change, to make things better. And the nurturing environment we had on Key Biscayne that allowed this community to show the way has been more than just about us. It's been about this whole county. And so let's talk about the economies of scale myth. That is, government's better and more efficient than it's bigger, if it's bigger. I'll just share one little story with you. We incorporated Key Biscayne in 1991. elected our first council in 1992, hired our first village manager in the middle of 1992, and the one thing about the argument against incorporation was what happens if a hurricane hits? So 1992, we had a manager and a village clerk, no police, no fire rescue, no public works department, no planning department, and guess what happened? August 24th, 1992, Hurricane Andrew swept across this county. Obviously, Key Biscayne was ground zero. And you say to yourself, okay, we're a small little government with 2 employees. How are we going to deal with this? You know, the magic of it is we were picked up in about 3 weeks. It took the county about 3 years because the county, as it turns out, viewed the trash as, quote, their trash. Our manager, who came from New Rochelle, New York, viewed the trash as a problem that needed to go away. And so, as it turns out, the ability of our local government to interface with FEMA at the federal level, get it paid and done, demonstrated absolutely unequivocally the economies of scale do not exist as government gets bigger. So what we're left with is the size of the lowest level of government grows too large, which is the case, I think, with Miami and Hialeah and Miami Beach. The consent of the governed becomes an empty promise. So right-sizing local government, should small village governments have helicopters and SWAT teams and crime labs? Of course not. And that's the role that should be played by a role like Dade County. It should provide public health service. It should provide major transportation. It should have an overview of everything that happens. But they should keep their nose out of what's happening in local communities as they make their governments and their communities better. So I would say to you, if you figured out whether I'm optimistic or cynical, I'm not sure, even after talking to you, and I can't see you. But I would say this. I have appreciated more than anyone would know my friend Carlos de la Cruz inviting me for that meeting. It's been a life-changing event for me, and I hope at least for my contribution, my wife's contribution, my family's contribution to the agony of all those years, how many times I would quit. And my wife, Diana, would say, don't quit, keep it up. And so all of this is a team effort. All of this has been accomplished on Key Biscayne. You can't forget Cliff Brody, and what Brody did was unbelievable. And I used to always say Cliff's job was to do it all, and my job was to claim credit for it. Because he did so well, I was able to do my job pretty well, which is claim credit for what he did. But I just would tell you that at the end of the day, if we can nurture government at this level, at the local level, then the future is bright. So thank you very much.